in those areas, and so page 6 and page 8.
All right, I
Do you
move
have-
that we accept the minutes of the meeting for the January 2019 meeting.
You move to amend them.
Now ask for discussion, and you put in your,
Okay, I'd move to amend them to make the corrections on page 6. The roll call vote should say Jeffrey Hunt, and then on page 8, one of the roll call votes should say Amy Ortiz, and the second one should say Amy Ortiz as well, instead of Justin Kutu in all those spots.
also, Mr. Chairman, on page 4,
There's an extra vote in there, that's why. Your name's just
Is
listed
that what it
twice.
is? Oh,
There's,
yeah.
there's 6 votes in there, so it looks like there's your name was just listed twice as opposed to once.
also, Mr. Chairman, on page 4, with Bob Asselon at the top of the page, about the 6th line down, no permits were found for additional apartment that was added at the time. Bob also stated that it's 32,000 square foot lot. It should be, it's actually a hair less than 3,200,
Okay.
not 32,000, but 3,200.
Motion to approve the minutes as amended.
As corrected, amended, right?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, before you get into it, I would ask that the board move petition 2019-5, which is items number 9 and 10 on the agenda, up for hearing at this time.
We can do that.
We need a motion to do it.
Okay. We
We need a motion to amend
Okay.
it.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, yesterday, I had discussion with Attorney Bill Landry, who represents one of the adjacent landowners. As a result of that discussion and further discussion with the town planner, Mark Carullo, and correspondence with the attorney for Randy's Auto Body, we became aware that because of the nature of this application, it's a mixed use on the property, and it is required that they go first to planning for hearing at the planning board, and then the planning board then make a recommendation to zoning. The zoning board is without jurisdiction until such time as that is done. I've been, through correspondence, informed that the attorney for Randy's Auto was going to request a continuance. I don't know whether or not they're here or not, but I had informed them that I would be advising not a continuance, a withdrawal, that I would be advising the zoning board that the matter has to be withdrawn without prejudice because the zoning board, at this point in time, does not have jurisdiction to hear it.
Okay. So should we open this first?
Mr. Solicitor, I believe that the clerk had been given specific notice from the applicant's attorney
Yes.
regarding that.
I received an email
Okay.
from the applicant's attorney, so if you open, I wanted to bring it up, that's the reason I wanted to bring it up. If you open it up and then have a motion that it be allowed to be withdrawn without prejudice.
Right. Okay. This petition number 2019-5. The applicant is Randy's Auto Limited and Keys Partners LLC. The owners are Keys Partners LLCs. The premises at 40 Keys Way. It's Plat 30, Lot 51, in a BP zone. Proposed use, the applicant is seeking a special use permit for auto rental and leasing, motor vehicle dealer, automotive body repair, service and cleaning, other repair services, welding, office support areas, and warehousing public. This is under sections 5E13, section 5G10, section 5G11, section 5G17, and section K68 of the zoning ordinance of the town of West Warwick as amended. So,
Make a motion to,
The matter be withdrawn without prejudice.
Yep. I'd like to make a motion for petition number 2019-5 to be withdrawn without prejudice.
I'll second that.
and for this one, Amy Ortiz will be voting.
For petition 2019-5?
Yes.
Okay. Peter Kelsey?
Yes.
Amy Ortiz? Yes. Justin Kuzic?
Yes.
Richard Banks?
Yes.
And Alan Hart?
Yes. That motion passes. Withdrawn without prejudice. Next on the agenda is a continuation of petition 2019-1. The applicant Elmwood Realty LLC. Owner is same. The premises at 656 Providence Street, Plat 41, Lot 79, in an R6 zone. The applicant is seeking a special use permit from 4 residential units and 2 commercial units to 6 residential units. This is under section 9, the use variance of the zoning ordinance of the town of West Warwick as amended.
Mr. Chairman, I have marked as exhibits, Exhibit 13, the zoning board decision of last month, January 30th. I have marked as Exhibit 14 an email that will be introduced by Member Calci from an email from the applicant to the building official dated January 9th, 2017. Another email, Exhibit number 15, the same, dated December 21st, 2017. And I was handed a letter this evening from Attorney Litwin that I've passed out to the board, and I've marked that as Exhibit number 16, that letter dated today, and I would ask that those be introduced as exhibits.
Do we have those?
Good evening.
How are you this evening?
Good.
If the board will recall, last we were here, Mr. Butler owns the property at 656 Providence Street, and he has, the building is 6 units, first floor, there are 2 commercial units, and the 4th floor, the 4 residential units. Mr. Butler's seeking a special use permit and also a use variance at this time. Special use permit would be to convert the 2 first floor units to residential units. The discussion that we had at the last meeting was concerning parking. Mr. Butler identified another piece of property down the road on Providence Street that he owns, that he, at that time, indicated to the board that he felt he had enough spaces there, or space there, to provide parking spaces for this building. Unfortunately, what's happened is the following. Mr. Butler had a survey done. Surveys tell a different story than that, sometimes the land which you're using. The surveyed land does not allow him enough property to provide parking spaces to this property. The property itself is a building, has spaces for the existing building. It has a retaining wall, and then he owns, it sort of grades up away from Providence Street. He did inquire what it would take to grade out the balance of the land and remove the retaining wall. The cost to do that is somewhere between $25,000 and $40,000. It's just not a possibility. So he tried. So where that leaves us is he would request of the board a special use permit to convert the 2 first floor units to residential units and a use variance from parking.
Excuse me, you're going to have to request an amendment to your application, because at this point, you haven't requested the use variance.
I thought we had amended it last.
No, you amended from a use variance to a special use permit. Now you're seeking a dimensional variance, which for parking, which you,
Is it dimensional or a use?
it's dimensional,
It is dimensional?
yeah.
Well, then, if we would need to do that, I thought we had done that, we would seek a an amendment to the application, then I don't think that that would impact anything, so that we could get a variance from the parking requirements.
To clarify the record, the application was originally submitted for a use variance. Through conversation with Mr. Litwin, the board agreed that that was an error and it should have been submitted for a special use permit. That would be, the special use permit, the purpose would be to allow the 6 units, the additional 2 units. Now, they're seeking 6 units with less than required parking. To obtain less than required parking, the code requires a dimensional variance. That is what Mr. Litwin, I guess, is asking for an amendment to include the dimensional variance as well as the special use permit.
Do you have any other information to give us at this time?
About the parking, I do, yes, if I may. I did,
Well, I think before they can go forward on the parking, the board has to decide whether or not it will accept the amendment to the application.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would like the legal counsel for the applicant continue his presentation. I think what he has to tell us as far as parking may influence us
Yeah.
in a positive note to give him the opportunity to put that additional information on his application.
The problem is, I don't think you have the jurisdiction to hear it, because it's not before you
apply.
until until he applies for it.
So we would have to approve the
You're pu-
amendment and
yeah, you're
then,
putting a
then
copy
hear the
for the-
facts about it.
You gotta, he's gotta put the amendment before you, and then you can hear the facts on the amendment. It doesn't say you have to grant the variance, it just says you gotta be willing to hear it.
I understand that.
So the specifics of the variance you're requesting would be as
A dimensional
outlined?
variance.
Dimensional.
Was that accurate, what our counsel said?
yes,
far
most
as-
definitely.
Basically, he's saying
Right.
that in addition to having you hear a special use permit, he would like the opportunity to have you hear a variance for parking. Without your approving that amendment to the application, you don't have jurisdiction to hear those facts.
Mr. Chairman, in the spirit of being open-minded and giving the applicant opportunity to present the rest of his information, I would like to move that the board accept the client's request for an application for not only special use permit, but also a dimensional variance permit for specific reasons that I'm sure that we'll hear shortly for 656 Providence Street.
Second. Sorry.
Roll call, roll call.
All right, we'll take a roll call vote.
Peter Kelsey,
Yes.
and it's Jeffrey that's in it.
For this one, yes.
Jeffrey Hunt,
Yes.
Justin Puccio,
Yes.
Richard Bank,
Yes.
and Alan Hart.
No. But I believe the motion does pass, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, now that it's passed, I'd like for the
Yes.
Legal counsel to continue his presentation so that we can hear any and all information regarding parking, to give the board maybe a new or better idea of what the presentation is.
Unfortunately, I wish there were more to offer, but there isn't a whole lot to offer other than the following, is that Mr. Butler's owned the property for 12 years. He's had the 4 residential units on the second and the third floor for that entire period of time. The building itself provides 2 parking spaces. That's all he's had for the 12 years. So the 4 units there don't even have the requisite amount. He's had no problems, none of the cars have been towed, he's had no problems with the police, he's had no problems with the tenants. So the fact of whatever requirements there may or may not be for parking, it seems to be working. I did some studying and I looked at the commercial units, if we're gonna go by the letter of the law and you add up what spaces you need, by the ordinances of the town, if somebody approaching you now for 2 commercial units on the first floor for a deli and another commercial use would actually need 14 spaces, 8 for the deli and 4 to 6 for the other space. Asking for residential spaces now, going by the letter of the law, it would be 2 per unit, so it would be 10 less than, or even more than what would be required if you go by the letter of the law. So asking for a use variance from that, I think, is something which is very doable and a fair request. Now, I do understand when granting a variance, the biggest hurdle to climb is the one about the beneficial use of the property and the commercial use. Since he's owned the property, he's had upwards of 8 to 12 tenants for various amounts of time. Jeff could tell you what the longest tenant was. It's been vacant for a considerable period of time. There's no beneficial use to him from a vacancy. He's left with, when these tenants leave, with the messes that he leaves behind, and in 3 instances, he's been left having to pay tangible tax bills. The town, as you know, assesses taxes for equipment and supplies and anything else that may be in a location. When those tenants, those commercial tenants leave, he's left paying that bill. That's cost him thousands and thousands of dollars in taxes that he's had to pay because the commercial tenants have left. So I think he meets the requirements for a use variance. I think he meets the requirements for the special use permit under Section 10 and Section 9 of your ordinances. I do know that with the variance, you are allowed to apply special conditions if you find that you want him to use his other properties for snow emergencies, which he does do at the time, but I understand that that's a difficulty because it might not apply to a successor owner. But again, there have been no problems. The property just does not seem to work as a commercial space on the first floor, and he's living proof of having suffered because of that.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Sure.
A few things. I think I should pretty much start where my notes start. Mr. Butler, you've...
Well, if you're gonna ask,
Yeah.
would you raise your right hand? State your name and address.
Jeffrey Butler, 155 Bondor Lane, Cranston, Rhode Island.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
Mr. Butler, this is not the first attempt that you've had with the town of West Warwick in asking for relief from parking for that building. Is that accurate?
I don't recall. I understand that there was an email, I guess, from 2 years ago that's being passed on. If I could see it, then maybe I can answer that question. So, I think 2 years ago is when I started this process.
I'm glad to show it to you, sir. There's 2 communications there from yourself to the building official's office. I believe that's in a communication, excuse me, of text message. Would that be accurate?
Do we have that?
The first communication is dated, I don't know the date, January of 2017. That's more than 2 years before you've come for this board and looking for relief of parking. At that time, you communicated with Pam Poulin, and I'm not going to paraphrase, I'm going to specifically read. January 5th, per building official, Judge Dumont, you will need to provide a scaled, detailed drawing of existing space. For proposed spaces for the 2 apartments, each room must be labeled and sized per room, layout of kitchen and bathrooms. Also need to provide a site plan showing all parking spaces. If you'd like to set up an appointment, blah, blah, blah. That's dated again, January 5th. You replied back to Ms. Poulin on January 9th, saying you just saw it. I will call for an appointment. On March 29th of 2017, George Dumont had a correspondence to you, additional information required. Call the building official's office, permit application pending, March 29th, 2017. Next correspondence was December 21st, 2017. Again, this is to Pam Poulin. She's replying back to you. Need to apply to zoning for approval to add 2 apartments on the first floor. Reply from Jeffrey Butler back to Pam. Hi, Pam. I'm not adding 2 apartments. I am changing the use of the existing units to apartments. The building is continuing to be 6 units in the R6 zone as per the zoning certificate. Next correspondence was, again, same date, the 21st, from Pamela to you. Because you are changing the use from commercial to living, you will need to go to zoning for approval. Same information she gave you 11 months earlier. You also must have adequate parking to accommodate the 2 extra units. If you have any questions, please call Attorney Alda Fiore. So, more than 2 years ago, more than 18 months ago. I understand your predicament, but, and I believe you're a Realtor, so you know realty better than I do, sir.
He's not a Realtor. Don't get him confused with Jeff Butler, who is a Realtor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's a commercial realtor, Jeff
I understand.
Butler.
No,
Yeah.
sir, I thought you were he. Not a problem. But you own apartment buildings. I believe your business is making a profit, and that's on your business plan. That's what you do for yourself, for your employees, and so forth and so on. The town of West Warwick is not in a position to secure any business or business entity to get to be a guaranteed profitable entity. By permit, by judgment, by resolution. But we ask that the people doing in business in the town of West Warwick abide by the ordinances, which are our laws in the town of West Warwick. That being said, if you're in the habit of knowing what you buy, if you looked at the record of that building prior to, and with all due respect, gentlemen, that problem has been, or that building rather, has been a problem for many, many years. I mentioned it last time that they parked on the front sidewalk where you have a wide sign. Today, one of your tenants was parked on the sidewalk on Penta Street. And
Do you know what was my tenant? Are you testifying?
You're
what was
right,
my
you're
tenant?
right. No, I'm sorry, no.
Okay.
There was, let me rephrase, there was a car parked on the sidewalk. Now, that being said, if it's one particular situation, it doesn't matter. But this is a particular part of the town that I'm sure that you don't know, Mr. Butler, how many parking violations that may or may not been given to the people that have parked around that corner, whether it be on Providence Street or on Penta Street. But the fact of the matter is, you bought a building that is problematic, that is legal non-conforming. The ordinances that we're talking about now were put into effect in the late 50s, early 60s, long after that building was built, long after I believe even the attic was renovated to a residential unit, whether it be 1 unit or 2 units. But the fact of the matter is, it was done. You bought it in 2009, I believe. You said you put a dormer on it, so you've made improvements. But in all good consciousness, in all good conscience, when we're obligated to uphold and continue the ordinances as they're written, it's impossible for us to pretty much grant either one of these, because one is tied into the other.
If I may,
Not yet,
somehow I figured that.
not yet. There are options. There are options for that property. If you look at it, what can I do now as a property owner, as a multifamily, multi-mixed use property owner? There are other options that you can do with that building. And if you go through a process, maybe at some future time, that this board would be very, in a positive note, to give you a dimensional, or to give you a special use. But to honestly say that no matter what you come up with, as keeping the building exactly what it is, commercial on the first floor, and the second and third floor remaining what they are, and just going back to how you were 6 months ago, parking will still always be a problem here. If you decide to change the building to possibly all residential, still, that's your business, sir. But we cannot tell you that you can or cannot do that. At some point in time, when you buy a building, it's buyers beware. So that we can't change our laws and change why the ordinances are what they are in order to try and give you success for renting the first floor, where you seem to be unsuccessful in doing that now. Thank you.
Now, a few things. First of all, I'm disappointed to hear from you what sounds to me like you've already made up the board's mind as to this application.
Why would
These-
you-
If
why
I
would
may,
you say
if I
that?
may, if I may?
Sure.
That's my opinion, and I'm entitled to my opinion as you were with yours. You're making, these ordinances are written such that if somebody has a situation that requires, whether it's a special use permit or a variance, this board sits and decides whether this person or this person or that person has made an effort that requires a variance from ordinances that are designed not to fix every problem, but the most problems we can fix. And I appreciate you bringing these emails. Since 2017, he's tried commercial, 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 commercial. When is enough enough? Do you want him to put another commercial tenant in there? And when the tangible tax bill comes, should he send it to the board? I don't understand when is enough, so I appreciate you bringing those. That's fine. He's a layperson. Lay people don't understand what we as lawyers understand or what you folks on the board may understand. So he writes an email, and he's told in order to do what you think you easily can do, which is to go to Cardi's and buy a mattress and get a refrigerator and throw it on in there, it's not that easy, Mr. Butler. You need to get plans done. You need to submit the plans. You need to let this board decide whether they want to do that. He decided at that time, I didn't realize all that.
Maybe he did,
So-
and maybe he didn't. That is
We'll let
immaterial.
him speak for that.
That's
Did you
immaterial,
realize
really.
that?
No.
That's
I wanna
enough.
say
That's
one-
enough.
I want to say one
No,
thing.
not yet.
All right.
So he makes another effort to rent it out for commercial uses, and he can't. These ordinances allow him to come here and present an application and say to this board, this is what I've tried to do. This is what I've done. This is what I can't do. I could really use your help. This board then can make that decision whether they want to or whether they don't. If they want to, Mr. Butler will say, thank you very much, I appreciate it. And if they say they don't want to, then there's another avenue that we can follow if we feel that the board didn't properly do its job. Simple as that. We're not here to offend anybody. We're just here to say, we've owned the property, this is what we're stuck with, will you help us out? That's all.
The only other thing I want to mention is you said buyer beware. I purchased the property 12 years ago. When I purchased the property, I did use it for 3 years, commercially and residentially. as we all are aware, in 2009, 2010, the real estate, everything changed. Look at Main Street here, how many empty spaces are. West Warwick's image has changed in 10 years. So I didn't buy the property a week ago, or 2 years ago, where I bought it and it's by a regret. I've had the property for 12 years, tried to rent it, commercially, and that's why I'm here now.
I understand that. One of the reasons, sir, that I thought possibly that you may add some other information to the board, so I agreed to have the dimensional variance added to the application tonight. And I think that that's still a good idea, so that everyone can be heard in their entireties. I thought that you'd be telling us something about the Penta Street properties. Now, I'm going back, I couldn't find anything on record, but I believe there is a zoning situation. Maybe our solicitor remembers this from a prior situation where Club Frontenac was using space from the Hospital Trust Bank, which is now the Chinese restaurant that's around the corner from them. That the number of spaces that Frontenac needed, some of them are from that other property. And I believe that there was a distance of 100 feet that could have been accessed as an annex to that property. And which in your particular case, sir, the Penta Street, 5 Penta Street, I thought was going to be part of your application tonight.
The 5 Penta Street property has the required parking for that property, but as we learned last time, you can only stack 2 cars, you can't stack more than 2.
Yeah,
So in a
correct.
case like tomorrow morning where it's gonna snow, if there's a parking ban, my Providence Street tenants can park at Penta Street while they plow and whatever they do, and then they pull back out. Again, 12 years I've dealt with this, I've never had a problem, my tenants have always had a place to park. It was a landlord, I'm concerned about that, I don't want tenants calling me, where do I move my car to? So that's one of the reasons why I bought the Penta Street property. So though it's not legally.
Is it now for sale though? Did I
No.
see-
Nope.
There's no for sale sign on it?
Nope, I'm not selling any
Okay.
properties.
So, well, you're saying that someone can park there in a pinch, but there's not enough parking on Penta Street either?
In the parking lot at Penta Street?
Yeah.
There's enough parking for everyone to fit in the parking lot when there's a snow ban, but then, of course, they're stacking and they're,
How many units do you have there, sir?
4.
4. Does that count the building that's in back?
Yeah, the back building's empty right now, it's unoccupied. And that has its own 2 parking spaces, so there's 4 units and there's 4 8 parking spaces for that property.
Okay.
But behind, where they pull in, the driveway, that's where the Providence Street people would park, tonight if there's a snow ban, and then then they all move after. It's never been an issue. I've never had a tenant's car towed.
Okay.
Well, again, the only thing, I understand, believe me, I do understand. What I believe that this board tries to do, we're given the information well in advance. I believe almost every member of the board goes to the locations themselves to see the lay of the land for every one of our applications. At least that's what pretty much they're asked to do. But I haven't contacted any particular board member on this. I am knowledgeable of the area. I said before that I own multifamily properties in very similar situation that you have. My remodeling came in 1990. All the updated codes were put into place. The number of parking units at that time was only 1.5 parking places per unit. But in the meantime, this particular board, since I've been on here, I think maybe for 2 years now, we've granted residential units in prior commercial units along Providence Street. So, we understand that, but in every situation, parking was not an issue. This is so much of an issue that in my opinion, it's an overwhelming issue, sir.
But if it remains commercial, though, we acknowledge that the parking usage now is almost 20 spots for those two commercial units. If I was to rent it out commercially tomorrow, depending on the use, they could have 20 spots parking on Penta Street, you'll be getting calls, I'll be getting calls, I'll be glad to defer them to you. I mean, that's really where we're at right now. So if I get denied, potentially, it could be that, and I'm trying to lessen the use as far as the parking goes.
I understand that, and if you just took it on a blackboard and on a piece of paper without any narrative on it, you would be correct. If you put a market in there, let me rephrase, if you put a drive-up donut shop, a drive-up, you'd have to apply for almost a drive-up for, well, that's almost impossible too, but you could ask for a request for a
What if he
drive-up.
puts a deli in there?
A deli, if there is a deli in there.
He wouldn't even need to be
The fact
here.
that they have delis.
He
been
wouldn't
in
even
there.
need to be here.
I understand that, but there was a deli in there, and I've been in there many times. The fact of the matter is, I've driven there, I've parked across the street, I've parked.
And he paid the tangible taxes when they left.
Sir, if you would have been here last night, you might realize, and I'm getting off the subject very quickly, it was large discussion at the town council meeting last night. Personally, I feel that that absolutely needs to be changed in the town of West Warwick. It absolutely needs to be changed. The property owner should not be responsible for the business that's there that is responsible for their tangible taxes, not the property owner. It's the same idea if you have a residential property. If you have a tenant that moves out and still owes car taxes, as a landlord or the property owner should be responsible for the car taxes. It's the same type of an idea. And I'm sorry that you got charged tangible taxes. If you want a person to help you get that changed, I'll be glad to be there to help you do it.
Yeah, what happens is, I don't know if the board realizes this in West Warwick, if I re-rent that tomorrow to a commercial tenant, if there's past due tangible taxes, I have to go pay them for the new tenant to move in.
Well,
You know, that's,
I think that you should, what's the term? Deny that or
Appeal?
appeal, there's the term, appeal that.
That costs a lot of money in legal fees, and in the
I
end,
understand that.
you lose. Been there, done that. It's just, that's the way it is.
Needs to be changed.
It isn't, and he's suffered.
Well, I can't help you with that now, and I don't know how the rest of the board feels. Like I said, I grew up there.
I have a question.
Mr. Chairman, if it's just my comment as the discussion goes on. In my report, I had submitted to you the standards of use for a special use permit. I just feel that, especially for some of the newer members of the board, that my report did not include the standards for a dimensional variance, so that in your discussion or your decision, the standards that are required to be met for a dimensional variance are that the hardship from which the relief is sought, number one, is due to the unique characteristics of the subject land or structure and not the general characteristics of the surrounding area, and is not due to a physical or economic disability of the applicant. Two, it is not the result of any prior action of the applicant and is not primarily to realize greater financial gain. Three, it will not alter the general character of the surrounding area or impair the intent or purpose of the zoning ordinance or comprehensive plan. Four, it is the least relief necessary. And five, if not granted, the hardship will result in more than a mere inconvenience. So I just wanted, as you go through your discussion and any questions you have, those are the standards which, because I normally put in your report, they
Excuse
were
me,
not in on that issue.
Excuse me, I don't believe the mere inconvenience standard is there any longer. Isn't it, it's 9.81 through 9.84.
Mere inconvenience is still a standard of
I
dimensional.
printed this tonight, I'm reading from your, the first one
It's
you
a,
read.
it's a Supreme Court standard.
Okay,
It's gotta be more than a mere.
well, we meet, whether it's there or not, I think we meet all of those of those standards, given the discussion that we've had this evening. I mean, I think Mr. Butler's made an effort that's beyond what others would make, and all of this is through none of his own fault. So if anybody has any questions, we'd certainly be able, Mr. Butler would certainly answer those.
Are you all set, Pete?
Thank you.
All right. Jeff?
I do have one question. So right now, you said the units will park on Penta Street if snow ban, parking ban.
They'll park at my Penta Street property, not on Penta, but right on,
on
yeah,
the,
on the property.
So if we grant you the variance, where would the new tenants' cars park during a ban?
Well, that would be the same location. There's
Same-
plenty of room there.
There.
Again, it's not legal
Correct,
parking,
but-
but it's enough room for them to get off street and park, absolutely. Yeah. Because that's where I should add, when it was, it's commercial, and the employees of the commercial spaces, they needed a place to park, so they would park there as well. So it's really no difference. The commercial properties require 2 spots per unit, that's 4 spots.
Yeah.
So that's where the employees would park over in Penta Street.
Amy, any questions? Justin, Rick?
I mean, having heard everything here tonight, I mean, I understand the concern. I mean, it sounds like it's going to be an ongoing issue, no matter who's in there and what type of, whether it's residential or commercial, we're gonna have parking issues, whether they're pre-existing or new, if they change. So I think it puts us in a tough situation to make a decision on what, I mean, it's just, it just puts us in an awkward position here.
And-
What do you do to,
As the attorney pointed out, that's why we have the zoning,
exactly.
those are the rules, those are the statutes that we abide by in running the town, but at the same time, these situations do crop up. That's what we're here for, to make those decisions. We hear facts when we try to get testimony and then balance the needs of the town versus the needs of Mr. Butler. Any further testimony,
If there are no
comments?
other questions, no, we have nothing further.
Okay. We hear from, do we close now, Al, and hear from?
Public,
Public
any objectors?
Okay. Now call for comments from any objectors or abutters, comments from the public? That's you, Mr. Boyer.
Robert Boyer, 15 Water Street, West Warwick.
Raise your right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do. I'd like to give you a little history about Penta Street and Water Street. The five multiple family housing. Both streets were two-way streets, okay, in the past. And as we progressed, one-car families, ended up with two-car families, and so forth. It got to the point where if they parked on Penta Street or Water Street, there wasn't enough width to those pavements as a standard 30-foot pavement on a street in West Warwick now. So they had to change Penta Street in one way, and Noble Street, which goes up the hill, it's a dead end, and Bowen Court. If they wanted to get out, they had to come down to Penta Street, take a right, go all the way around, come down Water Street. So all the traffic ended up on Water Street. It worked okay. I mean, Water Street fortunately has houses only on one side of the street, so the people were able to create parking on the opposite side along the river. I know there's new members on the zoning board, and one of the biggest factors when you develop property is parking. The parking more or less controls what you can put on the property as far as square footage of buildings. lot was always commercial on the bottom. For your information, the stores on Providence Street in Natick, they're small, little units. They're taken, they've been rented, and I believe this can be rented. The little restaurant, or delicatessen, whatever you wanted to call it, that was very successful. And a couple took it over after that, and they really, in my opinion, didn't have they were older couple, and they just didn't have the pizzazz to make it work. Now, the big thing about, should the bottom be commercial or residential? There's one factor you should realize, is that during the day, the residential parking is not there. So the commercial units have adequate parking. At night, it's the reverse. Commercial units aren't, the commercial parking is not there, and the residential parking works. Now, I had asked, I thought, the last meeting, that I'd like to see plans for the parking. You know, what we're hearing is that, well, they're gonna park over here, they're gonna park over there. There are guide rules that we have to follow on parking. An automobile or a truck or whatever cannot be less than 5 feet from the building. This particular lot, technically, they park 2 vehicles in the back of the building. Those vehicles do not meet the parking 5 feet from the building or 5 feet from the property line. So parking is such a big thing, and I'm not talking just about this property, about any property. When we design a project, we have to meet all those guidelines. And here where the applicant is asking to violate those. Across the street, he wants to park cars in there. You've got to think of fire trucks getting in. Now, if you were to take the offsets on 5 Penta Street, 5 feet from the building, 5 feet from the parking line, 9 by 18 parking spot, you have to have a lane, the minimum 15, and that's very, very tight. You're not gonna get the parking there. You're gonna violate parking, but you're not gonna get the parking there. So this isn't just a matter of, and Mr. Kelchi was right. You're not in the business, or in your positions, to worry about the income of private enterprise. I'm concerned that 22 or 28 homes are serviced by Penta Street, and the parking there at times is erratic. There's a parking spot on Providence Street, which I feel they should eliminate because the fire truck will not make that swing, no matter what. So, I sincerely believe that the lower floor should stay commercial, and I'm sure he could rent it, because the rest of Natick is rented. But you look at the dollars, and it becomes, what's gonna give you more money? Well, it can't be a selfish decision here. It's gotta be, we gotta follow some rules somewhere. I'm really concerned though as to the fire. In West Warwick, pavement, the streets have to be 40 feet wide in West Warwick, which calls for 2 5-foot sidewalks and 30 foot of pavement. Penta Street and Water Street are nowhere near 30 foot wide of pavement, so we're compounding more parking with with less pavement. It doesn't work. And it's a congested area. There is only, in fact, there isn't one house on Penta Street that is a single-family house. The one in back of number 5 is, as he said, it's a single family. He 2 cars. I am a little disappointed that we haven't seen a plan showing parking that he says he can get, and I don't think he can. I've looked at the aerials, I know the area well. I may have surveyed that property, I don't even remember. But, I don't think we should increase parking overnight, which it will be. I think the commercial could work if there's a diligent try to rent it as commercial. It was always commercial, and that's how I feel about the project. If you have any questions, I'll gladly answer.
Any questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman, the one comment on, that I just came to my mind, that the request has been made for a dimensional variance. If a dimensional variance is granted, a dimensional variance must be specific. In other words, if you grant it, you must be granting a dimensional, that you are granting relief from the requirement of 12 parking spaces to 6, 8, 2, whatever. You can't just say, we're granting a
Right.
dimensional variance. As when you do setbacks, you grant a relief from a 20-foot setback to 18 feet. So you have to be able to say, we're granting, if you were to do that, you have to say, the requirement is 20. We are willing to grant you relief, so you have X, whatever the number might be. It can't just be a vague number.
I'd like to add something, if I may. I believe that this board, or any board, should get Class 1 surveys or layouts of how the parking is going to be. I don't think it's just say, well, we can park over there, we can park over here, because it causes other problems as far as safety and other things. But again, I can't believe that we're here again, and I ask that this board be shown how the parking's gonna be. If I heard right the last time, it was gonna be across the river, but I guess that's out. I don't believe you're gonna get parking if you use the lot across the street.
And to address that point, that was part of the continuance that was granted last month, was that we would get those we would get the Class 1 surveys. That's what we asked for last month,
I thought that's
when we
how it
granted the
was.
continuance, but I haven't seen those yet.
Thank you.
Do we have any other comments from the audience? No? Okay.
Just 2 things to the gentleman's testimony.
Sure.
First of all, for the record, I don't believe that gentleman is inside the 200-foot radius. So for the record, the board would have to take that testimony, whoever you want to handle that. Secondly, the gentleman testified that the deli was very successful. The deli is the business that's gone out of business 3 times, operated by 3 different people, for which Jeff has paid tangible taxes on 3 different occasions. So I would disagree with that testimony. Thank you.
All right.
Just one other thing, Mr. Chairman, if I
Sure.
may. I would say, Mr. Butler, that there possibly is a different way to rent it, possibly for office space, maybe for an accountant, maybe for an ear doctor, whatever the case is. There has to be, hopefully, some way that you're able to go forward. But I'm not sure that personally, as a member of the board, that I can offer any, other suggestions as far as this board's business is concerned.
To respond. Jeff's efforts to market it commercially just isn't to a deli or an ice cream shop. It's to anybody who might be interested.
I understand that, sir, but it's not the responsibility of the town to guarantee Mr. Butler the ability to rent his property.
But it is the
It's
responsibility
not
of
our-
this board.
it's not our
But
responsibility.
it is the responsibility of this board to give him a fair shake. If he comes
Well, I
here
think
and
that's what we'll
tests-
do.
If you don't believe him, that's your, that's your choice, that's your opinion. He's
Yeah.
come, he's testified, he's presented, he's got a vacant space for years, he's suffered from it. The application before this board is to ask for a special use permit, allow him to go from 4 residential units to 6 residential units, and for a dimensional variance, which I think would be from the requirement of 12 spaces to the 2 that he has. I won't get specific about the numbers. He's tried the best he can. This is an avenue that's afforded not only to Jeff, but any of the other citizens of the town of Warwick, West Warwick, anybody who owns a piece of property. And that's the petition that's before you. We recognize the standards, and we're hoping that the board, if you have any questions, I'm sure we're going to get a fair shake. Thank you.
So just to clarify, I guess, the dimensional variance request, specifically, you require,
We require,
What?
it would require 12.
would require 12 for 6 units, and you have 2.
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. No further testimony?
Move that we close public hearing.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
All right. I believe at this time we need
A motion to approve, second, and then discussion.
Yep.
You need motions on each one separately?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move that, for purposes of going forward, that we move the approval of the dimensional variance for the property at 656 Providence Street,
From 12 to 2.
from 12 parking places to, from 12 parking places to 2 that are now existing.
I'll second.
We'll have discussion.
Testimonials will be at this time, Mr. Solicitor. Okay, I am planning to deny the application based on many things that we said here. The dimensional variance is just too drastic, and it would create problems, additional problems with the parking. It is not, it would be in this particular case possibly for financial gain. It would, in fact, alter the character of the area because of the parking issue, not necessarily because of the structure of the building. The relief in this particular case is not mandatory, but it is part of the business application of what the tenant is looking to do. So I, in fact, would be voting no.
Jeff?
I'm also gonna vote no on this.
No further. Justin?
I'm also gonna vote no, based off the same reasons. I mean, I think it's just a significantly drastic request, and I completely understand that it's an ongoing issue, but I think for the same reasons that Mr. Kelsey stated, I would have to agree with denying it for those reasons as well.
Based on the difference in the number of spaces from 12 to 2, and having heard all this testimony and completely understanding the situation that you're in, but due to the fact that it's such a drastic variance that we would be, the relief that's being sought is so drastic in the number of spaces required, I would also have to vote no on the dimensional variance.
I originally voted against granting the dimensional variance, just because I thought that we did not have enough specific detail. We're lacking the site plan, which we requested as part of the continuance. In addition to that, we've heard the concerns of the residents who live in the area regarding the safety issues, moving fire equipment, police equipment, whatever. And I do think that is a serious concern that we do have to consider. I also agree that the scope of the request from 12 parking spots to only 2 parking spots is a little bit too extreme. And so for those reasons, I too will not be voting in favor of the dimensional variance.
Mr. Chairman, I move to call the vote.
A second.
Take a roll call vote.
Peter Kelsey,
No.
Jeffrey Hunt,
No.
Justin Kutu,
No.
Richard Banks,
No.
and Alan Hart.
No.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move for consideration, motion to grant a special use permit, changing the use of the first floor from commercial to 2 residential units on the first floor of 656 Providence Street.
I'll second that.
We have the motion, we'll now take discussion.
I guess I'll go first again. For the same reasons again, it would be beneficial in some ways for the applicant to be able to change the use of that building, but again, it's the use of the building that's been there probably from the building's origins, probably goes back to the early 1900s. Again, because of the parking requirement that would accommodate and be attached to the granting of the special use permit, again, is very much of an issue and is a stumbling block, and I will be voting against the special use permit for that reason.
Jeffrey Hunt,
I will be voting no for this, reasons being parking, obviously, and safety mostly for the citizens around that area.
Justin Kutu,
I basically would say the same thing. Unfortunately, I'd vote against it, based on the nuisance of the parking and the issues that just unfortunately can't be overcome in that case.
Richard Banks,
Since the relief being sought is directly related to the dimensional variance, unfortunately, I'd have to vote no as well.
and Alan Hart.
I will also vote no for reasons already cited by other members of the board.
Motion to move and vote.
Second.
Peter Kelsey,
No.
Jeffrey Hunt,
No.
Justin Kutu,
No.
Richard Banks,
No.
and Alan Hart.
No. Motion's denied. This petition. Where are you, Bank of America?
Don't you come in near that area with me.
That's not the one. Hang on. Okay, all right. The next petition we're going to hear tonight, petition 2019-6. The applicant is seeking a dimensional variance and a special use permit for the purpose of locating a double walk-up ATM on premises located at 1475 Main Street, the Bank of America, Plat 15, Lot 18, Zone B. Good evening.
Mr. Chairman, on this matter, I have marked as exhibits, exhibit number 1, the application, exhibit number 2, the affidavit of notice to the abutters, exhibit number 3, the zoning certificate, exhibit number 4, the tax collector's report, and exhibit number 5, a 10-page site plan. In addition, while I did not mark it as an exhibit, I believe that I submitted to the board the decision of the planning board in, the planning board gave a favorable decision
Yes.
to this application. And also, while it is not in an exhibit, I submitted a legal opinion that I was requested to render to the planning board, which rather than submit my normal type report to you, I think my opinion to the zoning board, to the planning board, stands as it relates to the zoning.
Can we hold off for just a moment?
He's-
Yeah,
No.
take just a brief recess.
Justin, can you pull that? Or stop? Did it stop?
No.
It was. No, not the snow.
There we got it, I think so.
All right.
There's pause in 2 locations.
Oh, is that?
Yeah, I'm like, yeah. After the first one didn't work, I could go for try 2.
Justin, oh, you guys again, because I didn't receive it. Sorry, I didn't get one.
Oh, okay, all right. Actually,
Oh, okay.
just give it to Mitch.
This which I'm gonna submit, this is, we did this last time. This is the actual location. Mr. Boyd,
Yep.
all of them. I had a
How many people on those 2 streets drive by that intersection every? Paula, the green cards are being submitted. They don't have to be marked as an exhibit, because I marked the
They
affidavit.
gave me a photocopy of them.
You restart the tape.
Thank you.
Okay, we are now back in session.
Richard, if you could just hit record.
It is.
And
Mr.
for the
Chairman.
record, Amy Ortiz will be sitting on this.
Mr. Chairman, I have another exhibit. Exhibit number 6, which will be passed to the board, is a series of photographs that are representative of what is going to be planned.
Thank you.
You already gave them, these are copies they presented to us, the same thing, just so you have a copy.
All set out? All right. Take care of the housekeeping.
Congratulate you for killing 4 trees.
All right, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Christian Capizo. I'm an environmental attorney. I chair the environmental practice group at Partridge Snow and Hahn. Prior to that, I served in the Attorney General's office as the lead criminal and civil environmental prosecutor for the state for over 10 years. But tonight, I'm before you on behalf of the applicant, Bank of America. I also have the owner of the property here, Mr. John Rock, who's in the 3rd row back there, who's in support of the applicant's application. As you have before you, the plans submitted by Bank of America. I also have from Stonefield Engineering, Arthur Kuyan, who will do a brief presentation on the submission. I think you'll want to hear from him, and then he'll be available for questions. We are before you, as the solicitor said, for a dimensional use variance for parking. under your ordinances. Right now, the required spaces for the area are 94 spaces. There are existing 66 spaces currently. We're looking for a reduction of 3 spaces to bring it down to 63 spaces. Mr. Kuyan will testify as to the reduction of those specific spots. We are also looking for a special use permit to have more than one residential use at this site. What we are proposing is a 39.9 square foot standalone walk-up ATM kiosk. We provided the board as well as the solicitor with a proposal of what one of these kiosks look like, although it's not this location. It is a location that is in use, and I think a picture says 1,000 words, so you get a sense of actually what that kiosk will look like at 103 Leachers Ave, which is a tax, for the record, tax assessor plat 15 in lot 18. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Keon. Mr. Keon, you just have to come over here and introduce yourself for the record, and you can get sworn in by us.
What's your name, please?
Arthur Kuyan.
Could you, Arthur?
Arthur.
And could you spell your last name, please?
K-U-Y-A-N.
K-U-Y-A-N. And your position?
I'm a project manager at Stonefield Engineering.
Snowfield?
Stonefield.
Stonefield. Would you raise your right hand, please? Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. The project we have for you this evening is a proposed walk-up ATM. The existing site is 1475 Main Street, as well as fronting State Route 117. It's a grocery store currently. We were before the planning board on the 7th. We, obviously received recommendation to come to the zoning board. Before we go into the variance, I just wanted to give you a brief background of the project, what we're proposing, where the location is. We've worked with Bank of America, the client, as well as the town planner, to choose the best location for the ATM, to fit as many requirements of the ordinance as possible. I wanted to just go through the location of the ATM on an existing, based on the aerial here, before going into a little bit more of the site plan. As you can see, the location that we chose for the ATM is actually tucked away in the corner, as far away, back. The ATM itself will be located as far away from the entrance as possible. We decided to choose the least desirable spaces for the property, given the fact that we're already seeking variance for the parking. We were aware that we are going to be removing a certain amount of spaces for the ATM. So we thought it would be necessary in the location to not only meet the setback requirements, but also that the spaces we will be removing would be the least desirable. The ATM is going to be tucked away enough that it won't affect the operations of the grocery store. And the pedestrian use for the ATM and the grocery store, given the location away from each other, don't really intermingle. We understand that the requirement for parking is 94 spaces. I've been to the site many times, and other members of my engineering company have visited the site many times. The parking's not really an issue here as it stands right now. We ran some trip generation counts based on IT's 5th edition, and at a peak hour, a grocery store of this size averages about 54 trips. So even with the reduction of the 3 spaces, we don't really envision parking to be an issue. In addition, the ATM is going to be, I don't want you to think the ATM is its own standalone use, and that's kind of playing into a little bit more of the special use variance, where, your ordinance, the ATM is being classified as a bank. I think we could all understand that this is more going to be a standalone ATM and more of a supplemental use to the grocery store. We want to think of the people that are coming to the store. It's not, the ATM is not going to be the final destination. It's more the grocery store that's going to be the final destination. They're going to come to the grocery store. They can use the ATM, and the same patrons that use the ATM are going to be using the grocery store. the way that the banking world is moving right now, it's all about convenience. You're gonna start noticing a lot more of these ATMs pop up. Bank of America just has an interest in, just having a presence in West Warwick. The closest ATM from Bank of America, from this area, is about a 20-minute drive. So inherently provide a convenience to the residents of West Warwick. So, we hope with, given some of the things we've told you, that the board finds it favorable to grant these two variances for the property.
Arthur, can you explain to the board, this, for the board members, this was before the TRC in November of 2018, where Stonefield engineer was presented, made some changes to the original design based on the input from the TRC, which included Mr. Asselon, I believe the fire chief, and several other members, Mr. Carullo, I think, included. And then we were before the planning board on January 7th of 2019, had made those changes that were requested at the TRC meeting and presented those to the planning board, and as Mr. Feb indicated, there was a positive recommendation from the planning board for this proposal, subject to us coming before you for the dimensional use variance in the special use permit. Arthur, if you could just talk about the lighting in that area, that's going to be put in the direction of the ATM itself, why it's facing in versus out.
Yeah, and I just want to touch on some of the changes that we did make. Originally when we designed these ATMs, we don't really put a lot of landscaping into it, but there was a request to add some landscaping. So as part of the project, we will be landscaping it with some ground cover, some shrubs to give it a little nice, more of a welcome feeling when you do use the ATM. And it's at the corner of an intersection, you don't want to, it has to be visually appealing. So with the look of the new modern ATM and the landscaping, it should really help people traveling to the grocery store and through this intersection to really to get a welcoming feeling from it. The lighting, what we really focused with the lighting is to make sure that we minimize the spillage from the lights to the property line and the adjacent properties. So what we really try to focus on is provide lighting for the parking spaces, but not make it so illuminated that it would be an eyesore. Especially with these new LED light fixtures, if you're not looking at, even if you're looking at the light, they're pointed downwards and away from the property line with some back shield in the LEDs. So what they actually do is when they're creating the LEDs, they make the back half of it black, so it doesn't illuminate towards the back as much as it does for the front. Inherently for an ATM, you're going to need the lighting for security purposes. We want it, if it's dark all the time, it's naturally going to be, for something that stores that much money, we want to have it constantly illuminated for security reasons. And just in regards, the fire chief had some concerns about how close the ATM was to the curb, and we took it upon ourselves to actually rotate the ATM, so we did provide much more of a clearance from the property line to the ATM itself.
If you could explain to the board which way the ATM will be facing in relation to the road itself.
Absolutely. So there's going to be a face that fronts Main Street and a face that fronts the grocery store, each with the Bank of America sign on it.
And where will the kiosk actually be?
The kiosk will be on the interior facing the grocery store, Ross Grocery Store.
Okay.
So patrons will obviously come, park, or come from the sidewalk, walk up, and it'll be right here on the side fronting the grocery store.
For the board's edification, when we were before the planning board, there was one member of the public who attended that meeting. And although she did not testify, she did speak with us after, as she lives near or across the street from the grocery store and was concerned about that lighting hitting her residence and keeping her up at night. She didn't want it. And so we had already addressed it, and we assured her, I don't remember her name, but we assured her, it wasn't Arthur, but it was his colleague, Matt Langham. We spoke to her and said that the lighting will be only facing down directly towards the ATM, and it won't be that ambient light coming from the lighting fixtures. The other reason why the ATMs are facing the grocery stores for customer or client protection, Bank of America does not like to have the kiosks with customers that are back to the road, especially where it's on the corner right there. There's some concern somebody could pull up and while someone's at the ATM and potentially try to rob them. So we adjusted the kiosks so that the back of the customer would be to the supermarket versus the road. And in addition to that, you just touch on the parking around that kiosk.
Yep, so, there's gonna be 3 dedicated spaces for Bank of America. One of them is gonna be an ADA accessible parking space. The whole ATM itself will be ADA accessible. There's also gonna be 2 spots that are gonna be 15-minute parking only. So you pull in, for maximum time, 15 minutes, use the ATM, and when you're done, you pull out.
Other than that, Arthur, do you have anything else?
No, nothing else. If there's any questions, we're happy to answer them.
And then just, Arthur, in regards to the proposed plans that you showed, that we presented to the board in March, can you just touch on that if you want to? I know you have a few of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think like we said, it's always great to get a visual representation of what the ATM kiosk is going to look like. Here we have one of the sites that we did design a Bank of America ATM for. It has the ADA accessible spot. The only difference from what you're seeing here and what we're proposing is we're gonna have a lot more landscaping. It's actually gonna be a lot more visual appealing than what you see here. We have the double walk-up kiosk that you're gonna have sidewalks that are ADA accessible for patrons to use it. The 2 spots right here are gonna be for those 15-minute spots like we talked about. And we just wanted to, if you flip to page 3, you get also a better understanding of what the ATM looks like, some of the dimensionals, where the signs are gonna be, what the back is gonna look like, fronting Main Street, some of the colors. Like we said, it's about a 40 square foot ATM.
But and it's open air, basically, right?
Yes.
There's no kind of, it's not like a bus stop enclosure kind of thing?
No,
It's pretty much.
It's gonna be all open.
Okay. What are the hours of operation? Is it 24/7?
It's gonna be 24 hours.
Okay. And what's the anticipated usage there as far as the number of customers you anticipate?
I mean, it would kind of vary day to day. Depends how many people want money.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure I don't think you're in a position.
No.
Could you speak to the landscaping a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, how extensive is it gonna be? I mean, is it, my basic question that I'm getting at here is, will that offer someone a chance to hide? And hide in the bushes and potentially, try to rob somebody using that ATM?
Yeah, so, it's not gonna be anything where it's high ground cover. There's obviously a concern of buffering it too much, having high trees or something. If you stuck to more bushes, I mean, they're gonna grow to about 3 feet max, with some, visually appealing ground cover. I mean, I think the illumination and the security lighting should be adequate, in case of something like that. But the landscaping, I mean, yeah, I think it would be about like 3 feet high, the shrubs would get.
Okay.
And now if you're on the opposite side of those shrubs, you're on the main road right there, right?
Right.
So you really can't hide there.
Right.
You're on the sidewalk.
Right.
And then is there any kind of buffer or barrier between that and the road to keep, cars from driving into it?
Do you mean on the parking lot side or the Main Street side?
Well, any of the road,
You mean going up the hill, right?
yeah.
Yeah, so we are proposing a curb. On the parking lot side, we're gonna be proposing 3 bollards.
Okay.
Immediately where the patrons will be, withdrawing the funds. On the back end, there is already a sidewalk, with the landscaping too. We don't anticipate vehicles really, making that large of a.
How,
Arthur, how far is the kiosk actually set back? Do we have the dimensions on that? Yeah. From the sidewalk?
yeah, because you're talking off of the hill, right?
Somebody jumps the curb and just goes right into it. It's not that high of a curb.
Yeah, it's about 25 feet.
From the sidewalk or from the roadway?
That's actually from the sidewalk. So, and this looks like the sidewalk's about 10 feet, so it's gonna be about 35 feet from the road.
Okay.
And how about the side going up, like the hill? If you were going up the hill to come in at the side entrance?
Yeah, it doesn't interrupt it.
No. No, I just didn't know
yeah.
how, okay.
Oh, you can see it you can see the opening.
Yeah, the opening that we left here.
Can't see it there because it's not dark enough.
You mean the opening right here between the 2 curbs? or the
No, the-
opening to get into the parking lot?
Exactly, that's what you.
The entrance from 117 into the,
I was just saying how far it's set back off, like the curb going up that road
On the Legris side?
on the Legris, yeah.
It would be even more.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
And then, my final question, who's gonna maintain the area as far as, stone removal or, you know, keeping the ice out of there and so forth?
I think it would be on the client and, you know, a combination of the client and Bank of America
Okay.
to maintain the property.
John, is that correct? John. Just for the record, Mr. Rock said it's gonna be on him as
Okay.
the landowner.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have,
Just two quick questions.
Absolutely.
First, I'd like to welcome back Mr. Rock, former town council president, town of West Warwick for quite a few years. Welcome back into the chamber.
Not a lifetime either.
Tell me about it, John. You should have been at last night's meeting.
I've watched it.
You watched it? Welcome back. Is there still an ATM in the inside?
There is, yes.
Is that Bank of America?
It is not.
No, I would say that if it was, if it wasn't rather, this is more needed. Bank of America, just for your own edification, was in Arctic, right near the gazebo, across the street from the gazebo. That's been out of town now for about 2 or 3 years. So we don't have any Bank of America in West Warwick. The closest one, I think, is on Route 2, near McDonald's, Burger King, and stuff like that over there.
or something similar to this in Coventry
So
on Route 3.
this is actually an excellent location.
So I had a question just for clarification. So you're talking about taking down the number of parking spots that's currently available for the grocery store by 2 or 3?
3 spaces, so
Three
66
spaces.
existing, we're going to 63.
So that's, you're talking about 3 spaces that are going to be still parking spaces, but now dedicated to the ATM? Or you're talking about the physical space the ATM's gonna take up, plus 3 spaces that you wanna dedicate to the ATM?
That's correct, the latter, so the ATM itself will take up 3 spots, and there's gonna be 3 spots for the ATM dedicated as well.
And I have another question in regards to that. On the application itself, it says the required amount of parking for this site, and we know how important parking is, based on, just want to make sure this is clear. The required amount of parking for this site is 94 spaces, and the proposed ATM there will only be 63. And you're saying there's currently 66. So was there relief already granted to bring it to 66 previous to this?
You granted to 66 or 63? What's the new number gonna be, gentlemen?
63.
It'll be 60, so it's essentially a pre-existing conforming
Right.
use because it was required by 94 based on the square footage.
Okay.
66 already existed, and we're coming in and reducing that additionally from the 60.
So the only change is really 3 spaces,
That's
not going from 94 down to
No.
63, and I just want to make sure we're not
Especially with
talking
regard-
about that dramatic of a,
Especially,
okay.
Now, but do we need
Go from
to,
12 to 33.
does it need to be specified, though, that these 3 spaces that are going to now be dedicated to the ATM, that those also need to be included in this parking that is being dedicated from the grocery store?
So the 3 spaces that are being removed that you're looking for the variance on, that's where the ATM will sit on, correct?
Correct, yes.
So those other 3
You're not
spaces
losing-
for that, we're not going to
they're
lose.
not gonna lose, so they're still gonna be.
So the
it's not
physical
like
structure
that's
itself will be sitting on 3.
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Ortiz's point.
And I don't think that in this situation, they have to be dedicated, because if I could go into the market and walk across to use the ATM. So I don't think it's a situation here where they need the dedicated spaces. There's 66 spaces available for their use.
There are gonna be customers going into the market that are not Bank of America customers, who will park their car in the second or third row, walk over to the ATM, go into the grocery store and do their business.
They have,
Save themselves the $3 a service charge or the percentage or whatever. it is.
they have 63 spaces available for their use.
Right.
Rock's Market's not gonna say you can't park in any of those.
Right.
Well, it was limiting the parking to a specific time
Yeah.
limit that
Well,
I
those
think
are
that's
gonna
just,
be,
that's a suggested
Yeah.
time that they're, you wanna issue any? I couldn't hear. You wanna issue any tickets if they park more than 15 minutes? I don't think so. I don't think anything will pay on it.
I mean, the Rocks parking lot doesn't typically fill up to begin with.
Except maybe tomorrow with the snowstorm.
So if there's nothing further, that is, the applicant.
My biggest concern was the number of spaces we were actually looking at.
Anybody talking?
Any other testimony to offer?
No.
All set? Okay.
Motion to close public hearing?
well, anybody else?
Yep.
Peter, motion to close, second?
I'll second.
Are there any butters commentary from the audience? Nothing? Okay. Any discussion?
Testimony. I'll be voting to approve on both the dimensional variance and the special use variance. For all the reasons that are applicable, it's due to the unique characteristics of the land. It's not the result of any prior action, it will not alter the general character. It is the least relief necessary. And in this particular case, if we don't grant it, the hardship will be that it's not gonna be able to go through. So, that's, we do one at a time, that's for the special variance.
The dimensional variance.
Dimensional, what did I say, special variance, I'm getting too many words in front of me.
Yes.
So, am I moving the motion yet? No. I'm moving the motion. I move,
Motion for dimensional variance.
so moved.
All right.
I'll second.
Any other testimony?
Jeff? Amy? Any?
Roll call.
Roll call.
All right, okay, Peter Kelsey?
Yes.
Amy Ortiz?
Yes.
Justin Kuchu?
Yes.
Richard Banks?
Yes.
Alan Hart?
Yes. Motion passes.
Okay, I'd like to move that, the board, move the motion for a special use permit at 1475 Main Street.
I'll set.
Special use being the second use on the premises, one being a grocery store, this is for being a banking, special use. Compatible with the neighborhood, will not create a nuisance, will not hinder future development, conform to all applicable sections of the zoning ordinance, and is in conformance with the purpose and intent of the comprehensive plan. Also, just as an aside, the gentleman mentioned TRC. TRC is the Technical Review Committee, the town's Technical Review Committee, which is made up of our fire chief, police chief, planner,
Public Works.
public works, town manager on there? No. But it's our department heads for the most part, that all of these issues go through the TRC first.
I'll second that.
Peter Kelsey?
Yes.
Amy Ortiz?
Yes.
Justin Kuchu?
Yes.
Richard Banks?
Yes.
Alan Hart?
Yes. The motion passes. Thank you, gentlemen.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Mr. Boyer, come back. Stop playing.
No. We still have one item to cover on the agenda, and that is, I guess, an amended schedule
Yep.
for 2019. What has changed?
What has changed?
Thank you. What was that? John, thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, I'll change the date for, I think it was Thanksgiving, right? November?
Thanks. Yes, you had a meeting the night before Thanksgiving. I suggested you change it to the week before. And also you had a meeting on a Tuesday instead of a Wednesday, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
I did, boo-boo.
Do we know which?
So the one that was changed was November, I don't know what it was prior, but, it got switched to November 20th.
Yeah, I'll be here.
Thanksgiving was November 25th, so I had it from the 24th. Al moved it forward.
The original,
This is the new one?
Everybody got a new one.
Oh, okay.
So the dates you have are the new ones.
I didn't get one.
There you go.
We gotta make sure he's here.
So the new dates then are gonna be March 27th, April 24th, May 29th, June 26th. We have no meeting in July. August 28th, September 25th, October 30th, now November 20th. Okay, those are all Wednesdays? Okay. And no meeting scheduled for December. Okay. We need a motion to approve that?
Yeah, you approved it last week. Just approve the agenda as amended.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda calendar as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.
Justin and I second.
Richard. Good job, guys.
We will have a meeting.
Oh,
We have a meeting in March.
We do?
not all.
So 5 o'clock.
It is now. Thank you. I kept hitting record.
Pay any different?
I ain't already.
I saw the 94, it wasn't until they said it, wait, 94, why'd they come up with 64? You're right, like you said, is that 33 spots?
I'm shutting down everything anyway.
Now I gotta,
No, it's actually,
Fantastic.
he speaks broken English, good luck.
this photo is from my middle building.
All right, guys.
Now, number 2.
I just want to go to bed. Hi, guys. Been up for way too long.
This guy's gonna go to bed.
I might not go to bed.
I wouldn't mind having the extra.
No, he's gonna be up for hours.
Clown? What are you doing?
Yeah,
Said it's right.
my girlfriend's
Yeah.
cousin, he owns a
Yeah,
farm.
it's, the Holy
So I'll
Ghost.
go out all night and then go
He's
to
gonna be out all night, then out to work tomorrow.
No. Too old for that stuff. You're young, man. You can do whatever you want. Thanks, Alan.
See you later.
That's all I need.
Yeah.
I did ask if I had to, just because of where I work.